I'm currently outside of Daiso. If you don't know what Daiso is, it's basically an Asian home goods store. I was actually here a couple of months ago whenever it first opened, right by my house, and I noticed that they have yarn. So we are going to go inside and we are going to look at what yarn they have, and I'm probably going to get some, and then we're going to try it out and see how we like it. So let's go ahead and go inside and see what kind of yarn they have, and if they have any other crochet things. If they have any crochet hooks, that would be great, or notions or anything like that. All I saw whenever I came was that they have yarn, but I didn't look too closely. I want to get more or less a first impressions with you guys. So that's what we're gonna do today. So let's go ahead and head inside. So I'm back from Daiso and I got 4 different types of yarn and also a couple of other things while I was there. They have a ton of crafting stuff. I don't think that I realized how many things that they have. They even had some like needle felting kits there as well. And I saw some like embroidery floss, and they had a bunch of different types of yarn. I got 2 balls of this multicolor yarn. It is 50% cotton and 50% polyester. It is very thin. Don't know if you're able to see that or not. Pretty thin yarn. It doesn't have the weight on here at all. I think it's probably a lace weight, which no, weight 2. I don't know what that is, but it is pretty thin. It's thinner than DK yarn for sure. I don't have any like really thin yarns to compare this to, but it's thinner than any of the yarns that I currently own. So I'm thinking with this, I could probably make a bandana. I think that that would be cute, and it's cotton. So I got 2 balls of that. The balls are 25 grams, and that is 0.88 ounces, and this is in the color green. It has a lot of different colors. It's kind of, well, it's multicolored. So you can see that it has, like, the main color is green, but then it also has more like mint colors and more aqua, and then some kind of yellow throughout. So I thought that that was really pretty. So I grabbed 2 of these. Hopefully they'll be enough. And I grabbed 2 of the same dye lot as well. So if I run out, hopefully I can get more from that same dye lot. And then I also grabbed this. It's funny because it says knitting yarn on all of these, but this other yarn, it's a multicolored little cake. It's called Pâtissier, and I think this is in the color Midnight. Yeah, I don't see anywhere else where it has a color on it, but it does have on here that it is 100% acrylic, and it's 142.16 yards, which is a very specific number. It's an 80-gram cake. It doesn't say the weight on here either, but it says that the needle to be used with it is 4mm to 5mm, which makes me think it's probably a weight 4 yarn. And this just says needle, so I'm assuming for knitting, but it doesn't say a hook size for crochet, but it does seem pretty bulky to me, honestly. And then I also grabbed another acrylic yarn. This is definitely a weight 4. This just looks like a standard acrylic yarn. And I grabbed it's Melange Tricot. And this is in the color beige. And then this one is in the color blue. They're 45-gram skeins. So the needle to use on this says 5 to 6 millimeters, which that's kind of surprising to me because honestly, like it's saying to use a bigger needle with this than it is with this cake, but the cake is definitely thicker. So I think that this is just a weight 4 yarn. So I'll probably use a 5 millimeter hook with it, which is what I typically use for them. And I am thinking of combining these two colors and making a book sleeve. There is a tutorial online from Little Lemon Stitches. It's basically just a granny square, and then she shows you how to put the granny square, make it a book sleeve, and then add a puff border to it. So I think that's what I'm going to do with these. And last but not least, I also got this other acrylic yarn. Doesn't really have a name, it just says soft type on here. So there were regular acrylic yarns that were just acrylic. There were these Melange Tricot ones, and then there were the soft types as well. So I just grabbed the soft type. It does feel slightly softer than the regular acrylic yarn that they had there. And I think this is 100% acrylic as well. The weight is 35 grams, so these are 35 gram skeins, whereas these were 45 gram skeins. It says 3.5 to 4 millimeter on here, but I don't know if that's the hook size, the needle size. Yeah, next to it, it also says 4.2 to 4.5 millimeter. I might use the Google Translate on my phone and see what these things mean, and maybe it actually says maybe 3.5 to 4 is a hook size to use, but I'm not 100% sure. So each one of the small skeins plus the cotton yarn, each one of these was $2.25. And then this cake of yarn was $4.50. I think I'm going to start with the bandana first. So I saw a YouTube tutorial online for a bandana. It seems like it's basically just a granny square, not a granny square, triangle, a granny triangle, I guess. I've never made a granny triangle before, but I have a tutorial online about how to crochet a bandana. It's by Leonela Ceballos on YouTube, so I'm gonna start following that tutorial. This is pretty thin yarn, so I think it might take me a little bit, but I'm gonna use a 4 millimeter hook, which reminds me, I also grabbed a 4 millimeter hook from them, and it's one of the ergonomic ones, which is interesting. If I don't like it, then I'll just switch to my clover, but I think I'm going to use a 4 millimeter hook with this yarn. The rest of them, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to just get out my hooks to use them. This was the biggest one out of the metallic hooks that they had, but they had a lot of really small ones. They had, I think, anywhere from 2 millimeter up to 4 millimeter. This is the biggest one that they had in the metallic ones, and then they jumped up basically to plastic hooks, and I think they were like 7 or 8 millimeters. I'll have to go back and check, but I wanted to try this metal one and see how I like it. I also grabbed some scissors, and these scissors, they're called mini craft scissors with ruler, and they actually have a ruler etched into them. I don't know how useful that is, but I found that interesting, so there's that. And then I also grabbed a needle threader as well. I I tried embroidery once, literally just once, and I broke all of the needle threaders that they had there, so I just got that as well. I will see how this yarn works up, take some footage of that, and then we are going to make a book sleeve with this one, and then also I think we're probably going to make a different book sleeve just with different colors with the soft acrylic yarn. So we'll make two book sleeves, one with this and one with this, and that will kind of help give me a direct comparison between these two yarns and see which one I like better. So that's what I'm going to work on. I'm going to start with the bandana because I think that's what's going to take me the longest, and then we will go from there, and I will check back in with you guys once I have worked with this yarn a little bit. Okay, before I actually start, I did some Googling because I really wanted to know what all of the information on here meant for all of you, so we're going to go through them again. Basically, this multicolor yarn, this half cotton, half polyester one, So on here, I was wondering what these meant. I don't know if you can see this at all. You can't see it because it's too small, but basically on here, I was wondering what this meant because it had two different boxes on here. It's a 25-gram skein, 68 meters. I think I already said that earlier. And then underneath it, it has, basically it's all in Japanese, but it says 3 to 4 and then 3/0. And I didn't know what that meant because I'm used to seeing things in millimeters or in the, I guess sometimes I'm used to seeing them in the American. Yeah, I'm used to seeing them in either millimeters or in the like US letter ones, even though I don't really know those. But for example, a 3.75 millimeter hook is an F hook. So I'm used to seeing it in that, but apparently Japan has their own standards for crochet hooks. And so on here it said 3/0. That is actually the crochet hook size that they recommend for this. On here it says 2.3 millimeters, and that's where I got confused. But I looked it up, and it seems that a 3/0 millimeter or 3/0 hook is the equivalent of a 2.25 millimeter hook here in the States, which I do have one of, but I really want to use the hook that I got from there, which was a 4 millimeter. And I think that that'll be fine. It'll just basically be more drapey. If I hate it, then we'll switch to a smaller hook size. But because it's for a bandana, I think it'll be fine. So I'm still going to use this 4 millimeter hook. In Japan, a 4 millimeter hook is a 7/0. I wanted to update y'all on that first. I'm going to get back to trying to make this bandana. So this is what the granny triangle looks like so far. I'm really loving the way that the colors are laying. The color changes are kind of random from what I can tell, but it looks really good so far. I'm really liking how it's turning out, and it's nice and drapey. This yarn reminds me of Lion Brand 24/7 cotton yarn. Texture wise, definitely not thickness wise. This is a lot thinner than that. But the texture reminds me a lot of that. Honestly, a little bit softer. Maybe that's the polyester in here. It's not super stiff. I hate a stiff yarn like Lily Sugar and Cream. I can't work with because it's way too stiff on my wrist. But this isn't really hurting my wrist. And this hook is actually really good. It's quite smooth, more smooth than I was expecting from a hook that cost me, yeah, this hook only cost me $2.25, and it's actually quite good. It's not as smooth as a Clover Amore, but I actually kind of like that to kind of get the grip on this yarn. Hey everyone, I'm back. So it's actually the next day, if you can't tell by the change of clothes, but I finished the bandana. I followed that tutorial on YouTube that I told y'all about yesterday, and I ended up making one just very slightly longer than the other one. It's like one chain longer, because I don't know how to count apparently, but it's done and I think it's really pretty. I really like the way that the colors turned out, and so I really enjoyed making this pattern, and it was pretty mindless, which I appreciated. Now I'm going to move to the next project. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this cake. I'm now thinking I might make a twisted ear warmer out of this. I don't wear those super often. It doesn't get that cold here, but I'm gonna try that and see how that goes. I found a free pattern on Viv Crochet's blog, so I'm going to use that, I think, and make an ear warmer with this. And so I'm gonna get started on that, and then I will check in with y'all once I have worked with this yarn a little bit. Hello again, everyone. I'm back. So, I was working on this headband yesterday, or this ear warmer, and I realized I don't like the way that the colors are turning out. It's not necessarily anything against the yarn. I mean, I chose this yarn. However, if you see the way that it's turning out right now, basically, I've gotten into the second color and there's not really a transition between the colors, which is like fine, but it's like really blue and then really dark, and I don't like this transition because as I make this longer to be able to basically say it's double this, it's gonna kind of be blocks of color for the ear warmer, and I don't really love the thought of that. I think I would have liked it more if it was lengthwise, if that's when the color changes happen. I don't know. I just chose the wrong pattern for this yarn, I think. With these like transitions, I just don't think that this was the right project for this yarn, which is okay. We're here to learn, and so I'm going to frog this and I'm going to use it for something else. For the yarn itself, I did enjoy working with it for the most part. It's an interesting texture when comparing it to, say, a yarn such as like Big Twist Value. When we're comparing it to this is like really loose, and if I twist it like this, like I can separate the strands pretty easily. Whereas with this yarn, I found it interesting because it's really tightly spun. Like these strands are like very tightly spun around each other. And so like if I twist it, like I have to twist it kind of a lot to be able to even like, see, I'm already having trouble with this. So I think that's why it looked bulkier to me. It is still bulkier than, say, Big Twist Value. Like if we put the strands next to each other, I don't know if you can see that, but if we put the strands next to each other, it is a bulkier yarn than like a worsted weight value acrylic yarn, and it is like very, very tightly twisted. I will keep this yarn though. I do like it, and so I do want to find something to make with it. It's just not going to be an ear warmer. Now, moving on to this soft acrylic, the soft type yarn, I am going to try to make a book sleeve with this. It'll basically just be one big granny square. Let's see how far I can get with just one skein of each color. I'm doing the light yellow. I'm doing the light pink and then the darker pink. So I'm gonna work on that, and then I will check back in with you guys once I am done working on that. All right, see y'all soon. I made a big granny square out of it. This is 11 inches by 11 inches. And this is how much yarn I have left right now. I am going to try to maybe I've basically been doing 2 rows of each color as I move along. I will attempt to make 2 more rows using this light pink because this is just not big enough to actually cover any books currently. I have been trying to find something that it would actually work for. Um, and I grabbed, you can see here, I have some books. And so, like, this is kind of a normal sized, I don't know, this is about a 300-page book. I feel like this is a pretty normal sized hardback book. literally no chance will this fit in this square. Like there's no chance that this will fit. And so then I went down to a smaller book. This is a paperback book, and it's about, we'll say, 200 pages. It's closer for sure, but still no chance will it close here at this size that we're at currently. An even smaller book, you can see Dark Harvest here, and then this is the Wasp Factory. Bit smaller. And if I try to fit this one in here, once again, no chance it'll fit. So, then I was like, okay, I don't want to buy more of this yarn. So I'm going to try maybe journals. This journal's way too big. I tried this little one. This little journal will fit. So it could be like a little baby journal cover. So then I was thinking about it, and like not everyone reads physical books, so I was thinking potentially like an iPad, which is what I read on, but my iPad is way too big for this. It's bigger than any of the books that I have, so I know that it won't fit in there. But my husband has a Kobo, which is basically this small e-reader. I think it's the might be the mini, I don't know, but it's a pretty small little e-reader that he uses pretty often. And this seems to fit in here fine. I think what I need to do is I need to find someone that has a Kindle, because I feel like those are more popular than Kobos are. So we need enough yarn to basically stitch these together, and I was going to make a border on this as well, and then use the other pink color for the stitching of the actual book sleeves, and then see how much yarn we have left over from there. But I just don't know. I don't know if there's going to be enough yarn for it, but that's basically where I'm at right now. I finished everything up, and this is all I have left of the two yarns. I have a tiny bit left of this light pink, and then almost nothing left of this other pink color. So I weighed the yarn at first to see how much was left, and then calculated how much I was going to need for a granny stitch for a row, and it was more than I had left of the yarn. So then I tried a half double crochet border all around, and I ran out of yarn, of this pink yarn, this light pink yarn, literally like, I don't know, it was like 5 stitches before the last edge, which was so annoying. So instead I did a single crochet border around the edge, and I think it turned out very pretty. And then on the inside, to stitch them together, I used the other pink yarn, and I followed the tutorial by Little Lemon Stitches. For the most part, she does slip stitches to stitch them together, but I actually did single crochets, and there's a little bit of an edge in here, but I don't love doing slip stitches generally, so I just did a single crochet join on the inside, and it actually gave it a really pretty texture on the other side, so I'm quite happy with that. I think it looks really nice. And then I did single crochets around the outside in the pink yarn, and I followed her tutorial for the puff stitches for the edge here. I still need to add a button here, but I think it turned out really pretty. This is what it looks like. This is the puff stitch border, and then this is where the edges were joined. I think it turned out really cute. I really love the colors. So this book actually fits pretty well in here. I really like the way that this book fits. Then you can fold this over and it looks nice and cute. This is a pretty small book. It's not very long, and it's just a small book in general. Hi honey, what's up? I do want to talk about the yarn a little bit. So I know that I said that I actually quite liked working with this Pâtissier Midnight yarn, even though I didn't love the pattern that I was working with this yarn. I kind of feel the opposite about this soft type yarn. I didn't love working with it. It felt, I mean, honestly, it just felt like a cheap acrylic yarn, which is fine, but it's not very soft. I don't know what their regular acrylic yarn feels like. I thought that this felt softer in store than their regular acrylic yarn, but maybe it was more of placebo effect because I read soft type and then I was like, oh, it's softer. I don't know. It feels honestly like big twist value to me, and I can get, well, not anymore. Not at this exact moment, but I used to be able to get this giant skein for, if it was on sale, what, like $3, $4 maybe, and it's this giant skein, whereas this was 35 grams and it was $2.25. So I don't really feel like this yarn specifically was worth it. If you go to Michael's and get the loops and threads soft classic or whatever their value acrylic yarn is, they're buying Big Twist. So if you go and get Big Twist value from Michael's, I don't know if it's going to have the same label on it in the future, but it just feels like that sort of yarn, just in a very small skein. I don't know. I spent what, $4.50 on both of these skeins of yarn, and it made a small book cover, which is fine, I guess, but I could spend the same amount of money and get this big skein, probably multiple of these big skeins, and make a much larger book cover. I just don't necessarily feel like that was worth it. It just felt like a value acrylic yarn for a larger price tag. Do with that information what you will. So that's my review of this yarn. I don't have much else to say about it other than love the pattern, didn't love the yarn. It just was. Moving on to our last two skeins of yarn. So this is the Melange Tricot yarn, and it feels about the same weight as this soft type yarn. It feels maybe slightly softer. The skeins are also a bit bigger here. I'm going to make another book cover so I can directly compare to this project. Okay, I'm back and I have finished all of the different projects that I wanted to make with this yarn. I finished the book cover for the most part with the Melange Tricot yarn that I was using earlier. So it came out a little bit bigger than the one that I made using the acrylic soft type yarn. And I had some yarn left over, not a ton from those colors, but I was able to still make the puff stitch border, and I ended up going with a half double crochet border around the outside of the granny square, whereas on this one I actually made a single crochet border. But then on the inside of this book cover I did a slip stitch join instead of a single crochet join, so it does look slightly different than the one on the soft type yarn. You'll have to let me know which one you like better. This is them compared side by side. These are the two borders that I did. So on the top is the single crochet border using the pink yarn, and then on the bottom is the slip stitch border using the blue yarn. So you'll have to let me know which one of these you like best. As y'all saw earlier, I finished this bandana using the cotton yarn, and I didn't finish a project using this yarn, but we will talk about that in a second. Before I give my final thoughts, I wanted to talk a little bit about what these yarns are classified as. So on the labels of all of these, it doesn't actually have, you know, weights for yarn, worsted weight yarn, anything like that on any of these. The classifications that we're used to seeing, at least in the States, 0 through 7. So I've seen online that you can actually see what size yarn you have if you don't have the label with you by doing what's called wraps per inch. So you basically look for how many times you can wrap the yarn around in a 1 inch space. So this is only half an inch, but you can see how many times you can wrap the yarn around, not too tightly, but enough to get them nice and close together. So I actually did that for all of these yarns, and we'll talk about that right now. So for this cotton yarn, this multicolor 50% cotton, 50% polyester yarn. When we were talking about this earlier, I was saying how it was a thinner yarn for sure, way thinner than any of the other yarns that I had. And I did the wraps per inch test on this, and I actually found it wrapped around the ruler 22 times in 1 inch. So that actually classifies. That actually classifies this as a weight 1 yarn, so a super fine yarn or a sock yarn. So that's how thin that this yarn is, and I really liked working with this yarn. I think even with a 4mm hook, which is a bigger hook than what it says to use with it, it recommended using a 3/0, which is what we found to be the equivalent of a 2.25mm hook. On here it says 2.3mm, but that's close enough. This recommends a 2.25mm hook. However, with the 4mm hook, I think it turned out really pretty, and I really love how this bandana turned out. When it comes to the project, I loved this project, and I think that it was really simple, and I feel like I could whip up a bunch of these once I get the pattern down and get the hang of it. I think I could whip up a bunch of these and it would turn out really well. This yarn was only 25 grams, which is not very much yarn at all. I actually didn't finish the bandana with just 25 grams. I feel like if I had made a slightly smaller bandana, it would have been fine, but I did want to make it as long as it said on the pattern that I was using. But I feel like if I worked with this a little bit more and maybe made slightly smaller bandanas, I think I could probably use one of these for a bandana, maybe a smaller bandana, but either way, I feel like I could still make maybe a small project with this 25-gram ball of yarn. However, it did take me more than one ball, but you can see that I have the majority of the second ball still left. Now, when it comes to the price of this was $2.25. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty expensive for 25 grams of yarn. I was looking for cotton yarns out there to see if there was something that I could compare it to, especially with this weight of yarn, this super fine yarn. The closest that I could find was the Friends Cotton 8/4 yarn from Hobbii, which is a 100% cotton yarn, so it's not a direct comparison, but it is a super fine yarn weight. And that is actually a 50-gram skein that you get for it, and it's $2. Obviously, you have to pay for shipping for Hobbii, but a $2 skein for 50 grams of 100% cotton yarn, whereas this is a 25-gram skein, 50% cotton, 50% polyester, which I think does make it a little bit softer. I haven't tried the Friends cotton yarn, so I don't know how soft it is. I have seen some reviews that say that it might be decently soft, but I haven't tried it myself, so I wouldn't know. If I wanted something with this color scheme and also that was accessible, this wouldn't be too bad. So, hi baby bug, what's up, honey? So, okay, I'll be with you in just a second, honey. Let me just finish this sentence. So that's my thoughts on this multicolor, half cotton, half polyester yarn. I really like it overall. I think that it's a really good yarn. It's very soft, very easy to work with, doesn't split a ton. It does split some. However, I really enjoyed working with it, and I think the 4mm hook worked well with it. So those are my overall thoughts on this yarn. I would just talk about these two yarns at the same time because I feel like they were pretty similar. So there was the soft type yarn, and then there was the Melange Tricot yarn. These two yarns are honestly pretty comparable to each other. I think I mentioned earlier that I felt that this pink yarn was pretty close to something like Big Twist value, and I stand by that statement. This Melange Tricot yarn was actually a little bit softer than that. I will say that I did enjoy working with the Melange Tricot more than I enjoyed working with the soft type yarn. I used the same hook size for both of them. I think I used a 5mm hook for each one of these to make each one of these book covers. And overall, if I were to have to choose between these two yarns, I would use the Melange Tricot yarn. 100%. I didn't absolutely love working with either one of them. However, I had a better time working with this blue and white yarn than I did with the pink yarn. Now, I said that they are pretty similar, and I did the wraps per inch test on these as well, and I said earlier that I thought that they were a worsted weight yarn, and they were. So I was able to wrap the yarn 10, maybe 10 and a half to 11 times for each one of them, and that puts it pretty solidly at a worsted weight yarn. So this was definitely a weight 4 yarn, worsted weight. Now, when it comes to the price, once again, they were $2.25 each. And the Melange yarn, you got 45 grams, whereas in the soft type, you got 35 gram skeins. So the Melange yarn definitely was a better value. I wouldn't say it's a good value, but it was a better value than the soft type yarn. Now, overall, I don't think either one of these yarns is really a good value generally. I could get this same feeling, say, from the Dollar Tree Premier Basics yarn. I've gotten those before. They're $1.25, and I think that they're 50 gram skeins. I don't know where the Premier yarn is, the Premier acrylic yarn that they sell at Dollar Tree is. It should be somewhere in my room, but I'm not 100% sure which one it is. I might have already taken the labels off of them. However, I have the Crafter Square, which is also sold at Dollar Tree. This yarn is also $1.25, and I've gotten it at Dollar Tree before, and this is 60 grams, and you get it for $1.25. So if you have both a Dollar Tree and a Daiso in your area and you're looking for a better value, I would go to Dollar Tree because they feel honestly about the same, just a value acrylic yarn. However, if you're going to go to Daiso and you want to try the yarn, I would try the Melange over the soft type yarn. Now, they do have a lot more acrylic yarns there. They had probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 different types of acrylic yarns there. I only tried these 2. However, they're all $2.25, and they are all pretty small balls of yarn, pretty small skeins. So I don't know if it's ever going to be worth it unless it's like a really, really soft acrylic. However, if I'm going to get a soft acrylic, I'm probably just going to get Caron Simply Soft, and I feel like I can get really big skeins of that for a better value. So do with that information what you will. I did enjoy making these projects. I enjoyed making these book sleeves. I want to make 100 more of these book sleeves now, and I have a bunch of acrylic yarn to work with that I already have at home, like this Big Twist value, so I might actually just make a bunch of book sleeves because I really enjoyed making that project. I'm actually waiting on some buttons so I can put a button on these book sleeves as well, and then these will be done, and I might sell them, I might use them, I'm not sure. But final thoughts on those, I don't know if they're the best value in the world. However, if I had to choose between the two, I would choose the Melange Tricot. Moving on, I Really like this Pâtissier yarn. This was probably my second favorite out of all of the yarns that I tried. I know that I didn't even finish the project. However, I like this yarn. I think that it's really nice because it's so tightly plied. It doesn't split at all. And it seems bulkier than it is. I did the wrap test for this as well, and this came to about 10 wraps per inch, which actually does classify it as a worsted weight yarn. However, I think it's a thicker worsted weight yarn. I just don't really love how the color changes are on here. However, I think it'll be a nice small hat for someone, so I can donate this come the winter time and they'll get good use out of this. Overall, I don't think that it was the best value in the world either. It was $4.50 for this yarn, and it was only 80 grams. Again, not the best value in the world. However, this yarn I think is like decently unique, so I think buy it again. If I could find a yarn that was plied in the same way as this, that was less expensive, then maybe I would get that instead. However, I don't know if I've seen a yarn that's so tightly plied that's 100% acrylic like this. It was so hard. It's so hard to unravel, which I find so interesting. It's almost like it's like braided in a way. It honestly feels like it might be braided. It doesn't look braided, but it's so tightly spun around itself. I wish that you could feel it, that it feels unique to me. Unlike those other two acrylic yarns that just felt like any other value acrylic yarn out there, this felt more unique in that sense. And I really enjoyed working with it. I just didn't really love the way that the colorway was turning out for this project. However, I do think that it's a good yarn. Not sure how worth it is for the price, but I like the yarn itself. This 4mm hook from Daiso, I actually really liked, and for $2.25, I think that that is a great value. I have bought more economic hooks from Amazon before, and I hated the way that they felt. However, this ergonomic hook for $2.25, I don't think is a bad deal. This felt really smooth. It's not as smooth, obviously, as something like a Clover Amour. However, I really like the way that this felt, and it's the same type of hook head. It is those inline hooks, and it's only $2.25. I have spent upwards of $10 on an individual Clover hook. So I think that the hook is absolutely worth it. So if you have a Daiso near you and you're on the market for a hook that is 4mm or smaller, I would definitely go check this out and see how you like these. Now, I'm not sure if they have any other sizes that are larger than the 4mm hook. A 4mm is usually the smallest that I will go because I do use the bulkier chenille type yarn. So I would use a 4mm for, if you live in the States, something like a Big Twist Baby Bear. But that's kind of the smallest that I'll go for amigurumi. However, if you do like smaller hooks, 4mm or smaller, these are great. They also had big plastic hooks there. I'm not sure if they have anything in between, but I think the big plastic hook started at, I'm not sure if it was 7 or 8mm that I saw there. I would have to go back and check. But I'm not sure if they have anything in between this 4mm and then what the big plastic hooks are. I would have to check, or maybe check a different location. There's multiple Daiso in the area where I live, so I could potentially run into one if I'm near it one day and see if they have any other selection for the hook sizes. But I really liked this hook overall. So I think that if you're gonna get anything from Daiso, this hook is it. So final thoughts on Daiso and their crochet supplies. I really like this cotton yarn overall. I think that this one was probably worth it for me. I love the overall look of this yarn, and I think that I would use this again. However, when it comes to their acrylic yarns, I'm not sure how worth it is. I think you could get a value yarn a value acrylic yarn elsewhere and you would be better off spending your money there. But this Pâtissier yarn I think is unique, and this might be worth it if you're looking for a different type of acrylic yarn that is very, very tightly spun, woven, plied, whatever the term is. I think that out of the 3 acrylic yarns that I tried, this Pâtissier was probably the most unique and something that maybe you potentially wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. I don't know if I would make Daiso my go-to place to get crochet supplies. However, for certain things, I think it might be good. They also had a ton of very interesting yarns there. They had paper yarn, they had like scrubby yarn, and they had a lot of like almost tulle, it seemed, that you could crochet with, or ribbon yarn, things like that. So maybe for specialty yarns, you could potentially go to Daiso. I don't know if it's going to be worth the price. Everything seems to be about $2.25, except for the bigger things, which are actually marked with a higher price. And these are $4.50 for these. But generally, I don't know if I would be running to Daiso for crochet supplies. However, if you're going to go to Daiso for crochet supplies, definitely pick up one of these hooks if you use one of the sizes that they have. If you're looking for an acrylic yarn and Daiso is kind of your only option and you want kind of a value acrylic, then I would go with the Melange yarn from Daiso over the soft type acrylic. These are my overall thoughts on Daiso crochet supplies specifically. They have other craft supplies, so if you want me to try other craft supplies next, please let me know down in the comments. And if you have shopped at Daiso, let me know what your thoughts are on their crochet supplies. Do you like them? Do you think that they're worth the price? If you like this review, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. And I hope to see you guys in my next video. Stay loopy, my friends, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!